In this video, I will be going over the LeetCode problem 387, first unique character in a string. To start off, we're going to go ahead and read the problem description, and that is, given a string s, find the first non-repeating character in it and return its index. If it does not exist, return -1. So in this problem, what we're dealing with, I have the examples here and I'll get to in a bit. This problem we're getting is we're going to get an input of some strings. Let me actually make this one clear. We're getting some strings inputted, and our job is to look through our string, go through it, and the moment that we find a unique character, meaning that the string does not repeat, we're going to return the index of it, index where it's not repeating, to sum up what the problem is saying. And let's go ahead and look at some examples that we have here. And the first example we have is when s is going to be equal AB, AB. So let's take a moment to look at that. So in this test case of AB, AB, we have where, let's say, I'm going to use a dictionary, where A is going to be 2 and B is going to equal 2. And what this is showing here is because it does have more than one. Now, the whole trick of it is that we're trying to find something that's not more than one uh, repeating. That's what we have here. That's why we have a -1, because both we have two characters that are repeating. It's a total of 4, but because it doesn't clarify, it doesn't exactly mean that we're going to be on any index. We're just going to return -1 because everything is repeating. So this is one case of when it does not exist. However, on this one, let's look through it. So let's say Leet, right? Let's go through the letters each at a time. So let's start with L. And through L, I look through, I see 1. And scrolling through it, I don't see any other ones. So L is just going to be 1. And then what's the next letter? We have E. So E is going to be equal to, depending on how many times we see it. So of course we have 1, 2, 3. 3 times we see it, so we put 3, and so on. And if you notice, when we look through it, the only one that's going to be that does not repeat, because, well, we have we have 0, we have the letter O just being shown once, as well as the letter T. However, what it's asking is the first unique. We're asking for first unique character. So that means at the moment that we see it, we're going to output where the index of that letter is. So of course the first one we see is L. L is the very first letter we see. So that means that it's going to be at index 0. So that's what we're working here. That's basically what everything is doing. We're going to be looping through, checking each letter. We're going to check each letter to see where it's repeating, and then we want to check where the letter is being displayed. So let's start off with our understanding. So to get things out the way, we have an input of a string. We also have an output of a number. Well, let's make that more clear, an integer. An integer. So in the understanding portion, that's to sum it up. So we want to know from our A to B point is what are we starting with, what are we ending with, and that's our answer for that. Next, we're going to be looking over at the matching portion. So right off the bat, I'm looking at this instantly because I did mention loops. We're going to be using for loops. Already we're going to use for loops, and what's going to make this even more useful, because we are going to be assigning each letter based on how many times they show up. We're going to assign it keys and values. So we're going to use dictionaries. Alright, so then we're going to use dictionaries. And looking through it, I know we have for loops, dictionaries. For this case, because we do want to make it easier, is we want to, because that it never did say, does it say? Uh, it never does say whether we're going to get a lowercase one or a capital one, but to make it way easier on ourselves, we're going to be using the dot lower method. And this dot lower method is going to bring every letter, regardless of it, whether it's capital or lowercase, but if it's capital, it will make it lowercase. That way we don't have repeating. So in the case that I have maybe A and then A, and that's going to end up outputting it as A is equal to 1 and A is equal to 1, which isn't necessarily wrong, but in this case where we're working with our code, it's wrong because A is still A. Like it's the same letter, just different, whether it's capital or lowercase, but it's still the same letter. And we need to make sure that we don't have that error in our code. So we're definitely using our lower method. And for the most part, for what I'm seeing, I'm definitely using for loops, definitely using dictionaries, using dot lower. Now, thinking off the top of my head, real quick, we're definitely, oh, this is going to be very handy from the start. Not in method. The not in method, we're going to be using it in our comparisons when we're checking, because if it's not in our dictionary, we're going to go ahead and when a value is not in our dictionary, then we're going to go ahead and declare it. And if it's in there, then we're going to be able to increment our key. I'm sorry, the key. We're going to put a key in there with a value of 0, and it exists. I'm sorry, value of 1, and if it exists, we're going to increment it by 1, meaning that for every time it repeats, we're going to keep adding how many times we see it. So now with that in mind, let's actually take a moment to look at our planning portion. So in our planning portion, let's go ahead and take this step by step. What am I going ahead and need to do? And of course is we need to get an input of a string. That's what we're starting with. So already I'm seeing, let's see, what is it giving us as? Okay, reading through it, given a string s. So we know that s is going to be equal our string. So s is going to equal our string. However, it's gonna be giving me potentially capital lowers or maybe even a mix. So to get that out the way, we want to have s is equal to all lowercase strings or letters. So I'm going to have a mix of pseudocode in the planning portion. The next thing we want to do is we want to have our letter count be an empty dictionary. Now, dictionary, like I mentioned, or just to kind of put it out there, our dictionary is going to be this. We're going to have a key and a value. So for this example, we're going to be having and our key is going to be our letter or character, and our value is going to be the number. Now, of course, for dictionaries, it can work vice versa, but for this case, I'm going to be rocking it this way just because it's easier to code through, and it makes a lot more sense this way, where we say A is equal to 1 and so on. So I'm going to leave that there in the planning portion so we can reference that. Once we have that, now this is where the actual like going through the letters comes in. So we're going to loop. So we're going to create a for loop for each character in S. Perfect. Now, with that in mind, we're going to have that in, and we're going to check if a letter is inside. So So for loop, so we're going to call it ISO for each character. Let's see here. For each character not in, that's where we come use our not in from our matching. For each character not in our dictionary, uh, we assign character to number 1 or equal 1. And that's how we're going to go ahead and start that off. Whenever it doesn't equal, whenever it just doesn't exist inside our dictionary. So now that we have that, now what about the case that there is? So if there is, so we would just say else, and then let's see else. What we're going to do is we're going to take character letter, and we're going to add it plus 1. And that's all we're doing. And this first for loop that we're going to do while we're working here is we're looping through this one portion. Now, that will assign, so this portion right here from create the for loop down here, this is where we're now assigning, where we have an empty dictionary and we're assigning each letter a value being how many times they've appeared. And this is perfect. This is exactly what we need. So, what's next? Now that we have that, what do we do there? What do we work with now? This is where the next part comes in, and we're going to be using a for loop where, actually, let's just say it. So we're going to for loop the range of the length and of the input s. So what do I mean by that? So up here we had our example. Let's say this one right here, ABAB. It's a length of 4. So because we're going to go ahead and loop through 0 through 4, or 0 through 3 because 4 is not included, we're going to loop through each of the elements. So we're going to say A. So if we start from 0, we're going to check element 0, which is going to be A. And what we want to do is we want to put A in our dictionary. We're going to put it inside our dictionary value. I'm sorry, dictionary key. And then from there, that's how we're going to access our value. So we're going to access the number. So what I'm going to be showing it is like this. So let's say dictionary, and the example will be S, our string, and then we want to have the index. So breaking down how we have here, let me actually separate these out. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2. Okay, so these brackets out, the outer part, this represents where we put our key. Our key is going to be the letter. And then so our S index, based on when we're looping from 0 to n, we're pretty much putting 0 next to our S, so we're trying to get the element S from 0, and that's going to be for, let's see, for example, AB, we're going to put A inside of our dictionary. And then from there, that's how we're going to access our key. So I'm going to be leaving this here, and then we'll show the code. We'll show the next part. So this means that we would say, let's just call it dictionary again. Dictionary. Oh well, yeah, we have dictionary S already there. So we're going to say if dictionary S, or if A has the value of that's equal to 1, we then want to go ahead and return I, meaning, or I'm sorry, the index, because that's what we're after. We're trying to find in what place is the letter at. Not the letter itself, but the place of it. And then once we get there, if for any reason we loop through the whole thing, we return a -1. Because for any reason, this is not. Each element has to at least pop up once throughout our whole string, through our whole check. For any reason, everything is popped up more than once, then there's no unique. That means that there are no unique letters. So that means we have to go ahead and move on from it. Now, looking through it, it's a little complex once we reach this half, but through the code, I feel like it would be a little bit more clear. So, of course, to start off, let's actually get into the coding portion using our plan. So we could go back and forth referencing what we are doing. So we would say S is going to equal S the lower, and this means our input is going to be all lowercase, which is perfect. Now, I want to call this letter count. Letter underscore count. Fixing something up. Letter underscore count. And that is going to equal our empty dictionary. So what gives from here, now that we have our empty dictionary, now we're going to go ahead and create a for loop of each of the each of the letters. So we would say for I in S, S, for I in S, now moving stuff around. Pardon me. Yeah, so for I and S, we want to check if it's not inside our dictionary. So the way we do it, if I, our letter, is not in our dictionary, so we would call it letter count. Right? So then in that case, we're going to go ahead and call our letter count, or get our letter count, our dictionary, and we're going to put I inside of it, meaning that whatever letter that is, we want to give it the value of 1, meaning that it exists. And now we are now making it exist. And that's how we're going to go ahead and set our value. Now, then we would say else letter underscore count I. Now here's the next part. If it already exists in there, and then we see it again, we're going to say plus equals 1. That's all we're doing. Plus equals 1. And then once that's taken care of, once we loop through, that's how we're going to get our dictionary in. The next thing we want to do is we now need to go ahead and, let's see, create a for loop, plus 1. Okay, so let's actually indent this because I almost confused it. Now our last part, we're going to loop, so for loop the range of the length of the input S, if dictionary S index is equal to 1, return the index. Otherwise, we're going to return -1. So, how are we going to do that? So, to start off, let's go ahead and take it bit by bit as our for loop. Let's loop through the range. So, for the range of the length of the input. So, for I, let's call it for X this time. For X in S. So, we're going through all the letters. Now, here's where things get a little confusing, as I mentioned. So we're going to say if letter underscore count is s, and then we're going to get the index of that whole string. Oh, actually, I made a mistake up here. Range, we're going to have that length, and then from here we're going to close off our s and we're going to close off our range, and that's how we're going to go ahead and get the numbers to work. So we would get the number of s, so the placement of s, so we're going to start from 0. So let's say that's going to equal to a. We are going to check if it's equal to, I need to close that bracket first. Say if it's equal to 1, 3, we're going to return we're going to return x, we're going to return the index. That's what we want. And then next, for any reason when you loop through the whole thing and it just doesn't come up or it doesn't equal 1, that means the loop is going to end up breaking. So we return -1. And looking through it, this whole code down here, this whole code here is how we would get our answer. That's basically it. Thank you for watching, and I hope this helps.